In a short 20-year life, CNN has achieved a remarkable reputation for delivering news around the world. It has become the place to watch when there is a war going on or other kinds of events like that. Heads of state watch it, military leaders watch it, and everyday people watch it. The network is now struggling to maintain that identity and that role as the pace setter in a crowded 24-hour news environment. With the recent retirement of longtime chairman Tom Johnson, the network has been looking for a successor for the future. Today, Walter Isaacson was revealed to be the man who will take the reins of CNN. He joins the company as chairman and CEO after a 23-year run with Time, where he was managing editor of Time magazine and most recently editorial director of Time Incorporated. He joins me now from Atlanta. I'm pleased to have him here on this, his first day at CNN.
Hey, thank you, Charlie. It's good to be back with you, even if I'm down here in Atlanta now.
See, I mean, a man from New Orleans knows that there's something to be said about living in the South, working in the South, and creating in the South.
The good thing about growing up in New Orleans is you can come to Atlanta in July and it isn't all that hot feeling.
Tell me what appeal this job has for a man who had been editor-in-chief or managing editor of Time magazine, who had been part of the magazine world as well as the world of the Internet.
Oh, look, this is the most exciting job in journalism I can possibly imagine. And as you know, Charlie, I am, I don't know a lot about a lot of things, but I'm a journalist. I've grown up as a journalist ever since I was covering police headquarters for my local newspaper. And I believe that journalism has got to be at the core of what we do at a company like CNN. And I was very pleased that the corporation, that AOL Time Warner, wanted to put a journalist in charge. And, what I can bring to the party, I hope, is that we can make the network a lot more interesting, tell some wonderful stories, have a good sense of reporting, make it smarter, really appeal to those people who are curious about the world.
Candidly, what is the biggest challenge for you?
I think that sometimes we have too narrow of a definition of news at CNN, and it can feel wooden or boring. On the other hand, I don't feel news has to be boring. I mean, news is very exciting, and it can be more than the pronouncements that come out of foreign ministries or out of, Senate committees. News involves things like PTA meetings that are fighting over school testing, or laser eye surgery, or all the new advances in technology, health, education, religion that affect our lives. So I hope we can broaden the definition of news, make it a lot more timely, urgent, and exciting, but still keep it smart, still keep it well reported, not get all tabloidy or anything, but just say this is the important news that we ought to be covering.
Some would argue that the challenge for CNN is the following. Beyond what you just said, to tell good stories, smart stories, and tell them better than anybody else does, is that it's a different landscape today because you have new challenges that you didn't have 5 years ago and 10 years ago when CNN became almost an icon in international journalism because it had the landscape to itself.
Absolutely. When you have 1,000 sources of information, though, eventually people will gravitate to that source they trust the most. And so I think foremost our goal has got to be the most credible, honest, and trusted name in news. And after a while, all the razzle-dazzle and sensationalism wears off a bit, and you say, I got to be able to believe, I got to be able to trust, I got to be able to think they're honest. And in our souls, we've got to always be striving hard to do good, honest journalism. And in the end of the day, I think that's going to win.
What experience from Time magazine, from running that magazine and bringing a new life to that, or a continuation of its tradition but adding some new dimension, will most be applicable and appropriate for CNN?
First of all, broadening the definition of news. As I said, we tried to get on these stories that people talk about around the dinner table or having coffee or having a beer after work. Those type of things they debate, they discuss, they want to know more about. And that means sometimes pulling away from the very traditional news stories and saying, let's get on to something that actually provokes our minds or tugs at our heartstrings. And we did that at Time Magazine. It wasn't going soft. It wasn't like we put more celebrities on the cover of the magazine, but we did go on to those type of stories that affected our kids, affected our sports, our lives, our technology, the way we live. And I want to try to infuse CNN with that. Secondly, and this is something that's very relevant to your show, Charlie, you know, one of the things we did at Time is we said, let's not assume our readers are dumb. Let's assume they're as smart as we are. You know, let's not talk down or dumb down the magazine. Let's try to have intelligent conversations as if we were talking among our own friends. And I think we want to make CNN more conversational, to feel less like it's homework, and to feel more like it's smart people talking to smart viewers.
And how do you do that?
You have a high opinion of your viewer. You have smart shows like, you know, Jeff Greenfield, Joey Chen. You put on a signature newscast, which I hope we'll do in prime time in the evenings, where we have Aaron Brown, who's just come over from ABC, and try to do an hour-long newscast that covers not only important breaking news events, but social trends and religious trends and technology and various other things. And you put on smart people who know how to be very conversant. And I think also you do it with good, old-fashioned, reported journalism instead of a lot of people pontificating and trying to shout at each other on TV.
Dan Rather was on this broadcast the other day, and he talked about the fact that he thought there was less, at least in terms of network television, less of a commitment to international news than there had been in the past. And perhaps it was because of a less of an appetite by the American viewer for international news.
Yeah, you've got to try to make it interesting. We're not in the middle of a Cold War now. But I was just upstairs here in the studio in what I guess will be my new office, and the first person to come barreling in is Christiane Amanpour. Now, she's the greatest. I've known her for years. And Christiane can make passionate, make real, make very personal any story, whether it's a story about a crisis in the Middle East or a feature about children and orphans in Bosnia or Kosovo. And she puts herself and her emotions and her thinking into that story. And when you got great people like her, or you allow them to tell good tales with good narrative and really report them through, people will relate to that, and people relate to any Christiane Amanpour story. So if she knows how to make it smart, we just have to do it more like that. And I hope to have her on the air more. You know, I sure spent a lot of time talking to her this evening, and I hope to see her as soon as we get off the air tonight, and maybe we'll go out and have a drink and figure out how do you make international news more compelling.
There was much talk when CNN became part of Time Warner of the idea of leverage. There was much talk at the time that AOL merged with Time Warner of content sharing and symmetry and synergy as well.
Yeah.
How does that work, and has it been successful in the past?
I think it's got to grow naturally. I was over in Hong Kong where the CNN studios and the Time Magazine offices and Asia Week are all in the same building, and a lot of our reporters in the magazines have these webcams so that they're actually putting up video both on CNN and on the interactive services. And when something happens in Kathmandu, like the shooting of the royal family or the blind climber from Everest, and there's a Time Magazine person there, he can report for the various outlets. I don't think we want to force it too much. I think we want to deal with a variety of news outlets. We're not going to do anything artificial, but I'll work very closely with Norman Pearlstein, who is my boss at Time Inc., and he and I talked about it over the past few days of me coming down here. I hope I still have good relations with my friends at the various magazines at Time Inc. And already we have a People magazine show that we just developed that's been running for the past 6 or 7 weeks on Sunday night on CNN called People in the News, and it's a great success. We have in-style minutes on headline news. On Magazine has been doing great technology reports. I looked up this afternoon on CNN, and there's On Magazine, which is a spinoff of Time. So we're going to do a lot more of that, but we're not going to force it. We're not going to do it in a silly way.
But do you think their brand names, Time, Fortune, a brand Sports Illustrated, which is already part of the CNN SI.
Sports Illustrated. Look,
are brand names that can be exploited but have not yet been exploited to the degree that would make it more attractive?
Absolutely, without question. Look at each one of these brand names. They are the best brand names in their field. Fortune, Time, Sports Illustrated, Money, In Style, People, Entertainment Weekly, AOL, CNN. This is a company that has built really great brands. How does it build good brands? Because it really trusts in quality and believes that the things we create have to have journalism at the core. That's why I was so eager to take on this job when Jerry Levin and Bob Pittman and Jamie Kellner asked me, because, you know, I understand that if you really believe in the product, if you really believe in reporting and journalism, you're going to create things like Time and Fortune and Sports Illustrated, or like CNN and AOL, that have brand names people trust. And that's that's a legacy we inherited, and we really got to guard that.
You have been taking a look at CNN. At least you've been asked for your advice about CNN for the last several months, as other executives at Time Inc. have, because you're in the news business and CNN is in the news business. What mistakes do you think have been made in the last couple of years? Where has CNN gone wrong?
Where CNN went wrong, to the extent it did, is it allowed a perception to grow that it lost its way, that it lost its sense of focus, it's lost its sense of mission. That was partly, I think, just a perception, but that perception infects things. It infects morale and stuff. Secondly, there was a perception that ratings were slipping. Well, guess what? Ratings aren't really slipping, and they're actually starting to tick up again. Also, I don't think CNN should feel it's lost its way. CNN has a very clear mission and has got to quit being distracted by all the other cable channels coming along and say, we believe in our mission. The mission is great journalism. It's putting on signature news shows based on good reporting, good stories, honest analysis, smart discussion.
But by losing its way, it wasn't doing those things in the last couple of years?
I think every now and then people at CNN were looking over its shoulder and saying, oh, you know, shout radio, talk radio, pontification.
Riley's coming on strong. What do we do?
I'm not going to talk about any other networks because I think they all do their various things. But I think we should just be focusing on what CNN does. And at the core of what CNN does is actually report stories and try to do it honestly. We should always be on the lookout for any biases, any prejudices we have, because we've got to be out there with notebooks and microphones and cameras reporting stories honestly, and not try to build a network based on, you know, shouting or talking, whatever else, and that sort of thing, or on pontificating. You know, in Louisiana, there are two types of people. They're pontificators and they're storytellers. I believe the people at CNN have a mission, and that's to be storytellers. Let others do the pontificating and the bloviating.
In North Carolina, they used to say that there are two kinds of people, they're either mercenaries or missionaries.
Well, I don't know. And I'm not talking about other networks.
Or lovers or fighters.
I don't know what these other networks feel their mission is, and I'm not trying to judge that. I'm just saying we should quit worrying about what they think their missions are. We've got the great brand name in news. The better we report a story, the more fairly we report a story, the more accurately and the more sincerely and the more honestly and the more intelligently we report stories, the better audience we will get. We'll get a smart audience, a high demographic, people who want to stay informed. And that's a basic human instinct, I feel. People say, are you going to grow if you do that? You can get ratings if you do that. Of course, in this information age, there is one basic human instinct, which is, I want to stay informed, fascinated. I want to be engaged.
What's the possibility that has been talked about in the press and even among some of the participants of sharing a joint venture with someone like CBS News?
I think there have been ongoing discussions with CBS, other networks. I think that there's possibilities with CBS, ABC, NBC, whatever it may be. I even think there's some other outside print organizations we may want to talk to. I think that at the core of what CNN does is report news globally around the world and produce really smart reporting. We provide that reporting to many organizations. We could probably work out some arrangements where we work with some networks. I'm new at this game. I've only had one conversation on it today, but I know those discussions have been ongoing. But you're never going to see CNN get out of the business of being a great journalistic outlet. It's never going to sell itself, but it may form partnerships.
Okay, so you're open to the idea that there's possibilities of joint ventures in journalism with other network news organizations?
Yeah, if you want to, Charlie, we can make a deal right now, and we'll produce the top part of your show with a lot of great news segments.
Okay, but I'll make that deal probably. Let me just come to one last point. CNN was created by Ted Turner.
Yeah.
Ted Turner gave it life, he gave it mission, he gave it passion, he gave it commitment, and he gave it a sense of doing without reining in budgets by saying, if it's worth doing, we ought to do it, and we'll make it up some way, somehow. Where is his presence in CNN today?
You know, I talked to Ted yesterday afternoon and got a real pep talk from him. Visionary guy. He's flying down this afternoon. I think I'll see him in about, a few minutes, and we're going to talk. Jerry Levin and others who now run this company have said whatever it takes, whatever it costs, whether it's CNN, Time Magazine, the Time Inc. publications, to be the best at great journalism. And they're not putting grand pressures on us now because they realize that whatever it takes, whatever it costs, to be in the forefront of the journalistic business globally and worldwide doing good reporting. And I think they've got religion, and I know I have religion and passion for it.
Walter, congratulations. It's great to have you here on your first day at CNN.
Hey, Charlie, this is really nice of you to have me on the first day. And as you know, I've learned a whole lot from you, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Walter Isaacson, new chairman of CNN. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.